while I'm at it, so if I spark any questions in you along the way, feel free to type them in the chat and we can get those answered as well. Because I have the list of questions, I have a list of things that I want to touch on that was talked about in the Discord, and I just want to provide some further nuance on to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Hopefully, I can give you guys some clarity on this specific module because I know how ambiguous branding can be, or this personal branding can be, because it's a bit different than what a lot of other people are teaching, or if you are experienced in this space, it's a unique perspective because it's hard to turn you into a brand, and like a static brand or something on social media that gets everything across. And I feel like that causes a lot of internal struggle for some people, is like, how do I get everything that I want to talk about across in a one line bio or even a tweet or any of this stuff? We're writing out so much in the Notion document and going over so much information for something as simple as a social media profile and topics to discuss. So, the first thing that I just want to touch on is what we should be focusing on right now, because the main thing with all of this, as I said, it's very ambiguous. So it's easy to get lost in the weeds. So the main thing is choosing some interest, choosing something that you want to talk about and at least start to dive into. You don't have to limit yourself to only talking about that one thing. I wouldn't recommend only talking about that one thing right now. Like, you can test different tweets or posts or just write down different ideas for later. But in terms of the action steps at the end of the module, if you haven't gone through that, this will kind of introduce you to it. So the first thing is outlining, right? Outlining is extremely important. So as you are taking action on these specific things, you can make those connections and go back and eventually fill out the outline. So there was a question in the Discord earlier where it's like, where he was asking for step by step things to go through the Notion dashboard. Inside Notion, my purpose with that is kind of to treat it as a huge outline. It is a huge outline. So going over that and kind of struggling with trying to do those things is important, because then when you come and take action, you can go back and fill that in throughout. I'm talking like a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? It develops and gets refined to your personal brand over time. So, what we should be focusing on is outlining a newsletter, not for the sake of writing the newsletter yet. If you want to, feel free. That's great. If you have the time and the bandwidth to do that, start writing the newsletter. But outlining it, what that will help you do is start to generate ideas for topics that you can either start researching or just talking about, so you can start to get into this habit. So, what I mean by an outline of a newsletter is having a topic for it. So, preferably your first interest or the interest that you want to start talking about, and then outlining sections that will help you talk about that. So, having key points for the newsletter, let's say three, right? Three key points for the newsletter. And then off of that, bullet points like, okay, how can I fill this in? What's the next step? Like, what would help me write easier about this topic? And now you can either go and research those or just start reading about them. This will make more sense. But with that, that gives us an outline, or at least some clarity on what to start writing about on Twitter. And since this entire module is based around branding, I just want you to get started at least like posting one tweet a day. It doesn't matter how good it is. It's just a matter of getting into that habit and getting used to being uncomfortable, because it is very uncomfortable to put your thoughts out there at first. It really is. And so that's the main thing, and that I want to get across. And then, of course, one of the main things in this module was at least getting the first iteration of your profile out. So having that nice profile picture, a nice banner, a bio that describes either what you talk about, what you have authority in, if you have credentials to talk about, and other things like that. So, of course, this is all in the end module of the end of the module in the last section. So, things I wanted to touch on that were in the Discord and that I feel like were very important, and I will go back and add a module or a section into this module, and I'll update you guys when I do that so it's more clear and concise. But in terms of just choosing an interest, it really is as simple as just choosing one and deciding to write about that until you feel like, oh, I want to write about this instead. And over time, it gets refined. It's hard to explain until you do it. But the thing with this is that almost any interest has the potential to make money. So in that first like priority interest in the domain of mastery where it says like this interest makes money, you should focus on that first and start building authority there. Really anything can do that. And I want to paint this picture in Joey's case. Joey, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Let's talk about this really quick because uh, Joey and I have talked about this quite a bit. Joey is the productivity and psychology guy, right? So he has his performance consulting business, and a lot of people would assume like, oh, I want to study productivity. I'm probably stuck making like a planner or YouTube tutorials on like your favorite productivity tips or favorite um, like productivity tools, which is all great. But you can also, it's how you apply your interests is when they make money. And of course, this comes further down the road and it will make more sense down the road. I just want to show you not to hesitate on pursuing an interest that may not seem like it directly makes money. Because in Joey's case, think of productivity or psychology or another area of interest as the how, right? That's how you get someone results. But who is it for, right? Is it for a creator? So in my case, how does productivity help me on a day to day basis? It helps me get more content out. It helps me streamline my workflow so I have, like, I can get work done in less time, et cetera, et cetera. And I can start to create a solution like I have with the Notion dashboard where I can tailor productivity advice or that specific interest to what a creator or whoever you're targeting, their daily life. How does it apply to their day to day choices and their day to day experience? I call this the experience model, where it's all kind of interconnected, where the things that you do on a daily basis and the problems that you solve that come up from doing these things on a daily basis is what you're trying to target and how you are trying to apply your interest to either give advice or create like step by step how to advice on getting things done. Joey, does I feel like I'm missing something here? Did that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I like to think of it as cultivating skills to solve a problem that your target market has. So so like the first, I would say, year and a half of my creator journey, I was pretty vague. I was basically just like the scientific self-improvement guy. I started on YouTube and was making like basically science lecture type videos, which nobody except my mom loved. And then when I got started on Twitter a couple years ago, it was basically the same thing. And so over time, I found the target niche that I wanted to help, which was online entrepreneurs, business owners, and then got into the productivity space. So I took skills that I had been cultivating over time and then you started using those skills to solve a problem my target market had.
Yes. And to kind of paint this picture more, because I've yet to, you can probably tell, I've yet to like figure out the exact wording to explain this phenomenon. But let's take art, for example, right? It's common knowledge, or like a common thing to say, like, oh, you go to art school, you're never going to make money, whatever it may be. But think of it from, again, your daily experience. What problem does art solve in your life? What problem does productivity solve in your life? What problem does psychology solve in your life? Why did you learn it in the first place? Right? That's a good hint at what it can help other people do. So in the case of art, this is just one example angle out of a billion that we can come up with if we dive deep enough into it. But art, it can be very meditative, right? You could create some kind of system or practice for someone to introduce them to art, teach them the basic principles of art, but how does that apply to their life? What problem does it solve? Is it just meditative? Is it a good thing? Is it like a 10-minute practice to calm your mind down at the end of the day? What benefits come from that, right? Again, thinking in terms of pains and benefits, the pain in someone's life could be, I'm struggling, I feel stressed all the time. That's a very big problem in people's lives. And if you can position your art knowledge and package it up into a practice or system in a way that helps that problem of stress, or that uh, what's another problem? A problem of creativity and having better ideas and having that transfer over into your work. See, you can start to position a bunch of different things around that. So, of course, we talk about this all later, but this is just to illustrate the point that whatever interest you choose right now, it does have real world applications that can be talked about in your content and eventually turned into a product. So, for your interests, one good thing you can start doing is to start making connections as to how it helps you in your daily life, because that is much more easy to transfer over into actionable advice or some other kind of content. Is like, okay, how is this helping me right now? How is, like, even right now, how is me speaking to a Zoom call helping my life? And it could be like articulation or something like that, but hopefully that illustrates the point. And for people joining late, if you have any questions along the way, we have a good amount to go over that were in the Discord. But if you have any along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat and we will get those answered. So, Joey, is there anything else that comes to mind that we should cover before getting into questions?
Yeah, I just want to talk about something really quickly that I've learned the hard way, and I'll always soapbox about this when I have the chance. And that thing is consistency. So I just celebrated my 3-year creator anniversary last month. It started on May 4th, 2019. And over this time, I've seen countless people come and go on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, other platforms. And I've kind of come and gone myself on those platforms. And the one thing that separates the 1%, if you will, and the 99% is consistency, sticking around. So when you're starting your online creative journey and you're also starting your online business, I'm sure you're creating something, like I said, based upon skills that you're cultivating and based on things that you like, right? You're creating something that you want to be doing for years and decades. You want it to provide for you and your family and maybe even the next generation, your kids. So make sure that you're going about things from a place where you can be consistent at it. You're going to have periods where you've got to grind, you got to struggle. It's going to be hard sometimes, but just make sure that you are coming from a place of sustainability so that you don't burn yourself out and start hating it. Because last year I stopped being consistent and the algorithms definitely don't like it when you do that. So it took me a while to undo the damage that I did to my brand and my account. So don't make that mistake. Stay consistent and make sure this is something that you want to do for years to come.
No, that's gold. And that brings up okay, so first off is that a lot I'm telling you right now that if this a lot of this will be overwhelming because I'm trying to package up all of, like, my knowledge and what I do now after 3 years of doing this, right? So this is like building on top of what I started with. Don't hesitate to eliminate a part of the process completely, right? If the newsletter is stressing you out, eliminate it. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't think that it's huge priority. I would say the only priority at this point in time are tweets. Tweets, making connections as you are writing and generating ideas, changing your bio if you want to. I've done that way too many times. But if you have to cut the newsletter because you either don't have the time or it's overwhelming, cut the newsletter. If you find writing threads in the modules to come overwhelming, cut them for now. Like when I first started out, I was collecting emails, but I didn't write a newsletter for maybe 3 to 6 months. It's a very important aspect of my content now, but don't think that you absolutely need it. And then with content, just 1 to 3 times a day, once a day. That's it. That is main priority. If other things are stressing you out, pull them back for a bit. You can always come back to them because this is a long journey. So, to the questions, because we have a lot of great questions that will help with what we've been talking about here as well. So, the first one from the Discord username, Melkor Olvera. Hope I didn't butcher that. But I'm thinking about targeting the niche of hybrid training. I'm currently in the military in combat arms infantry. I am expected to be able to lift enough to carry up to 50 plus pounds on my back for hours on end, run 5 miles under 40 minutes, deadlift 340 for 3 reps, etc., etc. I can do all of this at over 20% body fat. I do look the part entirely aesthetically, but I'm very durable and have huge work capacity. Can I teach and document my training regimen despite being thicker than the ideal avatar? How would you go about this? Yes, 100%, because that's the thing. Again, with positioning, right? If your specific training regimen, this is very unique and this can go a long way because while everyone else, I'm talking about in terms of products here, when everyone else is selling, let's say, oh, the perfect, like get the perfect body in 10 days with this training program, you can attack from a completely different angle. It doesn't have to be focused all around aesthetics, looking like a Greek god and all of this other stuff. That's one angle that does sell very well, but you can start to you can turn this into some kind of fun training regimen for pretty much who you are. Like people that have similar interests and similar ideals as you within a similar age range that are at a point where you can help them, because a lot of people, they might not want to, they don't have the goal of getting to 8% body fat shredded. They just want to get healthier in a fun and sustainable way. So if you can package up this unique military style training into a way that helps people get healthier, you can target different problems like I've had to carry up to 50 pounds on my back for hours on end. Do you want to, when you're 40 plus years old, do you want to be able to carry your kids around on your back when you're like for 10 minutes on end or something? But no, it's extremely viable. And I would recommend just talking about that because it's very unique. Talk about your training regimen and the benefits that it's had on your life and how it differs from other ones. And you can even start to attack that angle of everyone. Like here's a tweet idea that could be refined over time, but it's like everyone's trying to get to 8% body fat and get shredded. I'm trying to carry 50 pounds on my back, run 5 miles in 40 minutes, and this, that, and the other, and then wrap it up at the end with like a one line summary of all of that, you know? And that's how I would answer the question. If you're in here and you have anything on top of that, feel free to leave it in the chat. And so from Liana, I have a question about posts. I want to know your opinion about the differences between different styles of writing. Can I still sound authoritative if I say it's better if we do that instead of you should do that? I'm still trying to figure this out. I can clarify that later if I'm not clear. No, that's 100% clear because it's important confidence is a very important thing because most people are not confident in their actions. That's why a lot of people are on social media, especially the self-improvement side of social media, because they're looking for that confidence. They're looking for the advice that people are so confident in that it makes them want to try it in their life and do it, right? They want that new thing that other people are confident that it will improve their quality of life. So, in this case, I would personally study Ed Lattimore like no other. Like follow his account, um, and study how he does things because he's an extremely good writer. Two, he is very good at being nuanced while at the same time delivering a very impactful message that people engage with. So Ed Lattimore in specific, I'll type it in the chat. Ed Lattimore. And I think his username is just at Ed Lattimore. So that's what I would recommend because it's like all of this wording stuff and like proper writing. There's so much behind it, which we will talk about in content writing. But yes, because you don't want to be writing things that kind of make you feel bad, right? You don't want to just write things to write things and put and like be polarizing because you're supposed to be polarizing or other things like that. Um, and what Jim just said, where he's heard it's good to target those that are 2 years behind you. Yes, that is the most true thing. So think about it when you're writing. How can I word this in a way that would register to my younger self? What would be impactful to my younger self? What kind of information was I consuming like 2 years ago, and why? Right? It's all about like reflection and understanding what makes people tick, but at the same time, what makes you tick because you are attracting people that have those similar interests as you. So that's a great metric to go by is like, would this make sense or would this impact me from 2 years ago?
Can I add on something to that real quick?
Yes.
So, a mistake that I've seen a lot of particularly fitness coaches make is they write some of their tweets in a way that makes their target audience feel bad. So,
Mm.
if you're a fitness coach, you probably want to help people lose weight. Like the majority of your clientele is going to be people who want to cut body fat. Well, some fitness coaches that I've seen have written tweets that make their clients feel bad. Like they basically say that they're dumb and they're stupid and they're intentionally fat. Well, what that does psychologically is it disempowers your target audience. It makes them feel bad. It makes them even associate negative feelings with you and your brand, and it makes them feel less like they can create the change that they want to create in their lives. So there's a difference between just simply making your audience feel bad versus kind of calling them out and subtweeting them or subtweeting yourself. I've found a weird strategy for me is subtweeting myself. And this isn't advice, but I'm just making a point. But like talking to myself sometimes and kind of calling myself out a little bit as opposed to or calling out my audience as well, because I know that they struggle with these issues. So, for example, a couple weeks ago, I had a tweet pop off that was basically like, it doesn't matter or it doesn't do you any good to be smart if you think too much and you act too little, right? Because I was struggling with overthinking at the time. And so you're like objectively kind of calling people out and subtweeting them a little bit, but you're just pointing something out. You're not making them feel bad, right? Like there's a difference there. There's nuance. So you can make people be like, oh yeah, I have that problem and it's costing me this, like it's creating these issues, these symptoms, without making them feel bad. So you want to go toward awareness rather than like you're bad because you have this problem.
Yeah.
That will help you make sales.
Yeah, it's attacking the idea versus attacking the person. So, like not attacking specific people's actions, but the idea behind that and why it may be like a faulty way of doing things. I had one more. Oh, yeah. One extremely good way to create content is just exactly that. I do this all the time. Is like I just give myself advice like right now at this point in time. Like if I'm being a little bitch, I tell myself to stop being a little bitch, but that like in better words, you know what I mean? Or if I'm not being productive, but I have the knowledge to be productive and I have been very productive in the past, what would I like what am I going to tell myself to do right now? It's like a public journal in a sense where if I'm sitting on the couch and I don't feel like doing something, it's like, okay, get up out quite literally a tweet right here. Get up off the couch, go on a walk, pop in an audiobook. Like you probably, if you guys have followed me for a decent amount of time, you've probably seen that exact tweet many different times. And it's because it's kind of like what's going through my head right now. I'm sitting on the couch. What am I trying to convince myself to do? What's my internal dialogue that I can structure and put into a tweet? Because that alone is extremely relatable because it's going on in your head right now. That's like relatability is a very big key in all of this.
I'm gonna tweet that right now and see what happens.
What the go on get
Yeah,
get up off the couch? Is this gonna work?
yeah. I haven't tweeted yet today, so
There you go. Okay, so next one from Davy Science: affiliate marketing. Yes or no? When and how to go about it? It's been on my mind as a good way to accomplish two things: networking with people ahead of me, and two, getting basic systems in place for earning money. I know it's a bit off topic. No, not off topic at all. The so affiliate marketing is very good, but there's one big thing to take into account here is that one, you should have experience in that domain, or it should be related to what you talk about. So I wouldn't go an affiliate for, let's say, what's something completely out of my domain, like I don't know, something. But I would affiliate for like a productivity product, maybe a mindfulness or meditation product, maybe even a business product that complements my own. So, like, I can target more people in my audience and help them out. So, affiliate marketing is also very good at the start if you have no idea what kind of money, I mean, not money, what kind of product to create, because then you can start to get experience with promotions. You can start promoting things possibly on your newsletter. You can start dissecting it and understanding it and creating newsletters around the topics that are presented in whatever course you are affiliating for. And just for the beginners out there, affiliate marketing is pretty much you are selling someone else's product for a commission. So if I went to, let's say, the Art of Perp or Ed Latimore, since we've talked about him, if I went to Ed Latimore on Twitter and I asked to be an affiliate for one of his tweet writing courses, then he would give me a link that when someone purchases his product from that link, I get 50% commission for that sale. So if you're if you want to start writing about social media growth but don't feel experienced enough to create your own product, you can start to get experience and make sales by affiliating for someone who already has a good product. This is important, already has a good product and that product is already selling. Because if you affiliate for a bad product, that could look bad on you if people aren't getting good results with it and you're just selling to make money. But if you're affiliating for a product from someone who has a good reputation in the space and the product already sells, that's a great way to either start developing your expertise around that and already have people who are interested in that topic. So when you come to create your own product around that, people can buy it and vice versa. So affiliate marketing, it's great for practice. Um, and if you want to just be an affiliate marketer, that's not a problem at all. It's not a huge touching point in this cohort as a whole, um, because I like to affiliate for things that complement my products. I like to have something that I own and that I can iterate on and do in that way. So that's mainly what we talk about. So the next question, how much focus do you put on your tweet analytics when you're at 0, 100, and 1,000 followers? Do you rely on Twemex and Tweet Hunter to resurface your best tweets or a manual process? So I will show you as a whole in it's probably not the best idea to like get to look at tweet analytics all the time when you're just starting out, because if you're at say 100 or 500 or sometimes even 1,000 followers, your engagement is very hard to gauge just because there's not enough feedback coming in, right? I can gauge my analytics much better with as many followers as I have because I have so many people looking at it that the numbers start to get consistency. And if you're at like 100 followers and like only 2% of that following sees a tweet that you put out at 7 in the morning, and then the people that log in at 8 at night aren't going to see it, so you only get like 2 likes on it, but then you tweet at a different time. There needs to be some form of consistency and growth before you can start accurately um, judging how well your tweets do. But inside, I'll share my screen. Okay, so inside the actual Creator Command Center itself, this will come later, and there is a module on this later. But inside of the Inspiration Lab, yes. So there is a section that I have down here where I have mine inside here, but you're always, and this was from 2020 to give like an example of my top performing tweets when close to when I was just starting out. All of these is probably from like 500 followers up to maybe like 40 or 50,000 over here. So you can start to see like which tweets did the best for me around that time. And notice how I'm focused heavy on lists. At the start of the next module, I really talk about lists and other things like that. But you can go through here and you can just, as you're reading or studying your interests or generating ideas, you can quite literally just flip these things around and use the structure, right? Because the structure is very important for leading people down the page. Now, in terms of analytics, this is the main thing I would recommend doing. So if you go to Twitter and you go to more, you go to analytics, and then you go to tweets. Wait, did that just show? This is way off topic, but did Jessica Vaughn follow me? What? That's actually kind of crazy. Damn. I'm going to have to DM her. Just kidding. But top tweets, you go to top tweets here. And then what I did throughout these entire months is that I copy and pasted my top 3 tweets into this section of, like, let's say it's January. I go to my top tweets and I post or I paste 1 to 5 in here, right? Just because it shows good analytics. So for this one, you can look at the activity. You can pay attention to profile clicks, which is a very important metric. Again, we'll be going over all of this. But profile clicks is an important metric on what you want to double down on, because some tweets, like some feel-good tweets, like one of my most viral tweets had like the lowest profile clicks I've ever had on a tweet in my life, right? It did not lead to more followers. So that's the one thing you should start to pay attention to in analytics, is what way of saying things or what topics are getting the most profile clicks and not necessarily the most likes. Because likes, it's like anyone can like something, but few, like, you have to grow. You need to get people to go to your profile and actually click on things. So that's this is the main way I would do analytics when starting out, is just start to pay attention to what your top tweets were, and then you can either copy and paste these into the actual lab itself and keep track of them, or just start refining and rewriting these in a way that you think will do better. And then over time, 6-12 months, it just becomes second nature. It's like, okay, I want to grow. I'm going to write a tweet on this. I'm going to word it this way. It's just going to work. And okay.
Something to add to that really quickly is this is a little bit advanced, so don't let me confuse the issue. But You can also look at the analytics of each tweet. So you can take a little bit of time each week and like go back and look at your bangers and look at the profile analytic for each tweet and pay attention to the tweets that have a high profile click to like or impression ratio. And that's something interesting to pay attention to because that shows you the kind of tweets that are really driving your growth, right? So it's great to have retweets. And I'm seeing more and more people talk about paid retweets. But the thing is when you get something retweeted intentionally, you want that obviously to drive growth, right? So the way that a tweet will really drive growth is if it's getting high profile clicks. So every now and then, like I said, look back and see which of your like what content of yours is getting a higher than average profile click ratio. And then that's the content that you really want to be remixing. Use the scamper technique. I know Dan's talked quite a bit about that. Remix that content and keep posting it because those are going to help you grow.
100%. And this also brings up kind of tying into what we started the call off with in terms of like choosing an interest. The things you actually talk about relating to that interest or the ideas that spark from that interest may not be like directly related to that interest, right? Like what lesson did you learn when implementing, let's say, productivity advice as the interest? Like when you're studying productivity, what idea does that spark and how does it apply to your life? Or how are you going to apply it to your life? Or how would it apply to your former selves 2 years ago, that person's life, right? And so that can you may feel, because we keep talking about like talk about your interests, build authority in your interests, but there are certain like you may tweet something that doesn't even imply productivity at all, but it's still related to it and you're still building authority in that interest because it's related to productivity. Hard to explain, but just again, with content, don't worry so much about what exactly you're saying. More so, follow the process of dissecting your interests in order to generate ideas for tweets. And then, of course, throw in some beginner level step by steps relating to that interest area as well and talk about productivity, include it in your bio and things like that. Exchange productivity for whatever your interest is, of course.
This is a
So,
little bit related, but storytelling helps a lot as well. Storytelling is very powerful. So I completely changed my strategy with my newsletter, especially a few weeks ago. And I saw a dramatic improvement in my open rates. And that was instead of every email being like how to do XYZ, I was telling a story. So I would think about something that happened in my own life and tell a story about that and then get to the point, like bake the point in there. Or I would talk about a case study. Like, hey, I sent out like one or two emails last week where I was talking about calls with one of my performance consulting clients where, like, hey, I was on a call with a client the other day and he was talking about how he wasn't really sure like what his North Star was, what his goals were. And here's the effects of that. And here's how you develop that. And so bringing in that storytelling really spices up your content and it also makes it more relatable, right? Like it helps people see, hey, how can I fit this piece of information into my own life? How do I apply that? If you're just
exactly.
like, here's the information, like here's the stuff. Like that's the way my YouTube videos were when I started off, and that's why I didn't grow. My mom and her cats watched my videos, but no one else did. Um, but that's part of the reason why is like if you just throw the information out there, like people probably engage with it and bookmark it and stuff like that, but they probably won't use it. So if you spice it up a little bit, that's not always the case, but if you spice it up a little bit, people are more likely to engage with it, relate with it, and actually use it in their own lives.
That has been a game changer for me. And again, we're gonna dive into like content mastery in the next uh, module. But starting with a story in a newsletter is or in anything like a newsletter or some kind of long form content or just speaking through the lens of previous stories when you're trying to describe something in a tweet is it's applicable to everyone. Like having storytelling or your own personal experiences as, let's say, the start of a newsletter, everyone can do that. And that's how you kind of separate yourself from everyone. If everyone, let's say, started a newsletter with a story, they'd all be different. They'd all be different. They'd all be interesting. And then it would allow you to form a new perspective on the topic you're talking about. So if you guys read my newsletter that went out today, I started with an older story about how like I almost died in like kayaking in Catalina Island when I was a kid in Boy Scouts. And that helped me, like that came to mind like a little bit after I actually started writing the newsletter, where I wanted to talk about how to reinvent yourself. And this takes some skill and it takes some creativity to be able to make that connection. But it's like the waves and us flipping over in the kayak, it like helped represent what happens when you start to change. Like you start to pull pieces from your identity and try to change them, and that inevitably sends you into a low point in life where you're kind of stressed about everything and all the change, but it's inevitable. And so I kind of use that story to give the entire article a unique perspective that I'm coming from, even though I'm reiterating the same exact thing as pretty much most of my newsletters, where I talk about create a vision, create goals, set priority tasks, right? It's just a different way of explaining that, a different perspective that you're coming from when you have different experiences to pull from. And one other thing with that is that if you just start with the story, like you can lead into really any topic imaginable. And like if I started with that kayaking story and then wanted to lead into writing content, and I could talk about the highs and lows of writing content because I'm targeting, let's say, content creators, then it's an incredible way to do that and kind of separate yourself from the crowd.
Yeah, I just want to add really quickly, you don't have to have like I know I overcomplicate things and a lot of beginners overcomplicate things. So you don't have to have like these big complicated stories to tell a story. Like you can tell a story from like any experience whatsoever. Like one of my friends, Eddie Kwan, recently told a story about how he was sitting in a coffee shop with his girlfriend and he ordered an espresso and a biscotti. And he was talking about like the creativity that went into those particular things. Or for example, I'm planning to write a newsletter talking about NASCAR race that I recently watched. And like in that race, my favorite driver had to start at the rear of the field. He drove his way back up. He like got kind of messed up by his pit crew. They got some penalties and almost won the race, but then something bad happened to him and he didn't win. And that may seem kind of silly, but there's still lessons to be drawn from that. So I could write an email talking about in like a couple paragraphs, tell that story, and then relate that to productivity. Like, hey, you sometimes you do everything right in your power, but bad stuff happens to you and it's out of your control. So you've got to do your personal best to make things as good as they can be, even though other factors may pull you down, right? So you can take something from your favorite show, celebrity drama, stuff in the past, like your favorite movies. Like, for example, my favorite movie is Interstellar. Showed it to Dan when he came to visit me last year. But you could take lessons from that and be like, hey, like in this movie, Matthew McConaughey was amazing and he did these various things. Here's how it relates to my niche. Obviously, you don't say that part, but like it's kind of like three magic words in storytelling is it's kind of like I learned that from Russell Brunson. The book Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson, I'll put it in the chat in a second, is fantastic. I highly recommend you all read it. But saying it's kind of like leads into a metaphor, or it helps your metaphor relate to the story you're trying to tell and the point, the information you're trying to convey.
2000%. That was good. But cool. Next question. So, how often do you come back to the Ordering Consciousness block to review, edit, or re inspire? I find myself losing focus even when I've put a fair bit of energy into clarifying my vision. So, wondering how effective it is to simply come back to that block on a regular basis, or if there's another tactic you use. No, that's exactly what I recommend. So, by ordering consciousness block, he means like the very first set of pages in the Notion dashboard where it's like your vision, the mastery method, all of that other stuff. That's exactly it. All of this, as I mentioned, is an outline that you can come back to and add to. The thing that I want to do right now, and I tried to make this clear in like the very first section of this entire module, is that the way you gain awareness, or the way you kind of solidify awareness, is by like knowing, okay, here's kind of what I'm aiming for, but I don't really like know what's over there yet. And then you write tweets, you like take the actions you're supposed to take, and eventually an idea comes to mind where it's like, oh yes, that's exactly it. It's the aha moment. And then you can come back and put that in its respective place. So whether it be the interest you want to pursue or something relating to your vision, because you may not know exactly what you want right now, but you may find hints along the way that you can tie into that. And then that turns into some kind of content that either spreads awareness for other people, allowing them to make that same exact connection, or it's just inspirational because it's like, this is what I'm working towards. This is what I want in the future. And if people have those similar wants, then they would be someone that potentially follows you or just wants to hear more of your advice because it's relatable. So, another one from Liana. When I find something amazing, I have to tell everyone I know about it. It does not matter what it is. I love to share in general. How can I use that in my business? Yeah. So post it as a tweet, but you also have to take into account like what makes tweets do well, which we'll talk about eventually. But you can go to the, like what I mentioned earlier in the inspiration lab, where you can start to see like how engaging tweets are structured. So you take that thing that you want to talk about, and this is extremely good because you're constantly having these ideas, you love talking about them, that energy will show, but you need to structure it in a way that is readable, impactful, and that will lead to engagement, right? And that's the fun of it. It's like, how can I package this thing up to share this thing that I'm so excited about and have it register with other people? So that's how I would do it. And all right, next question from Chelsea. Under the life's work section, there's the question, what is the big problem you want to solve in the world? My answer to this is to share and teach others how to authentically navigate and optimize the unique feminine experience. That's perfect already. Wanted input on if you think this is too zoomed in or broad. No, definitely not. So again, with this, the big problem that you want to solve in the world is variable and will change over time, right? The purpose right now is to kind of attack that specific one that you want to solve and kind of use your interests to create either education or inspiration or other things around that, right? You're helping people solve that problem through your content and hitting it from multiple different perspectives. But then down the road, a bigger problem may come up because now you've kind of solved that problem for yourself and other people. It's like, okay, what's next? What do I start talking about next? What actually gives me energy? Because maybe down the road, that may not resonate with you anymore, and you're allowed to change your mind, right? You're a personal brand. You're a human being, and you're going to grow over time, and so is your audience. Like, your content, in a sense, is pretty much like just advice, like stepping stones to, it's like breadcrumbs in a sense. You're leaving behind breadcrumbs of like your improvement in whatever interest you are going after in your life.
A quick note on the breadcrumbs thing is a lot of people think that they shouldn't tweet out simple stuff, but something that Dan talks about often is that the majority of people in your audience are beginners in whatever topic that you're talking about. So you need to post things that, like you said, are like breadcrumbs, and it helps build people's awareness of your topic and the problems that they have, the problems that you solve. But also keep in mind, there's this thing called the curse of knowledge, which I struggle with often. And that's where the stuff that you talk about and that you study is so obvious to you that you begin to at least automatically assume that everyone else knows it too. So like like for me as a productivity guy, I think the idea of like time blocking and eliminating distractions and turning your phone off when you work, stuff like that's obvious, right? Like everybody should know that. But a lot of people don't. They don't know the effect that those distractions and lack of structure have on their productivity. So you just have to keep reminding yourself to post this stuff. Just because it's obvious to you, it's not obvious to everybody. So there's still people that you can help. And even if they do know it, it helps to be reminded. It helps to be told those things in a different way, maybe in a story like we were talking about earlier. So just keep posting that stuff, even if you think it's like too obvious.
Yeah. And you can attack it from different angles as well, because the the thing that makes basic advice impactful rather than cringe per se, because there was a time, I'm sure a lot of you haven't seen it, but there was a time on Twitter where like everyone was just like, why are you posting all of this basic advice, all this platitude, you're just copy pasting quotes, whatever it may be. The way around that and the way to avoid that is specificity. It's how does that platitude or that basic advice actually apply to my life right now? Like, how could I spin it as advice to myself right now or advice to my previous self, right? A quote. Let me look up a best quote right now. Best quotes. Be who you are and say what you. Hold on. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. Okay, let me think about this. So if you could spin it as like if you aren't having good ideas, then you probably aren't consuming good information, right? That's just off the top of my head, and that doesn't really make sense. But it's being more specific with the basic advice and how it applies to either things that you do on a daily basis or other things related to that. These best quotes are like way too generic for me to do that. But yeah. And you can even spin it from the lens of like, here's what I wish I knew relating to this interest area at this time, right? Or here are the main things that I've learned after getting these results with this at this time. And so, another question. When you're on vacation, have to visit with family, how far in advance do you have content batched? What does your workflow look like if you have to go out of town? Do you make non-negotiable work hours in this scenario? I found that when I leave town, all of my good practices for focus hours just disappear. I don't prioritize it, I guess. And when I get back home, it adds like a week of nonsense trying to get back into this way of things. Yes. So it's going to be very difficult at first because like Joey and I, sometimes it's difficult to create content, like the ideas just aren't flowing. But in general, there's times where like I just go hard. Like I'll create maybe a week's worth of tweets and then I'll start stacking on top of that. And then I don't really have to worry about it because it's already there, right? And so this I don't. Joey may have a better way of doing this, but if you have the time, just add on a bit more work before you go on vacation. Like if you're scheduling 2 or 3 tweets a day, schedule 4 or 5, but like, have them stack so they're starting to cover the next week. And then when you do that over the span of a week, you don't have to worry when you go on vacation. Joey, do you have anything on top of that?
Yeah, a thing that will help you out with your content creation a lot is so if y'all know JK Molina, the ghostwriter, I helped him with this and it like dramatically increases output. So your brain is better at different things at different times of the day. So I can write I don't know if I've written an article about this yet in the Modern Mastery community, but I probably should. But you're better at doing like implementation and editing and stuff like that, like hard stuff, when you're more focused and energetic. So if you're a morning person, you are better at those things earlier in the day. But when you're later in the day, when you're less energetic and it's harder to focus, you're better at creative things. So you're better at drafting and brainstorming and stuff like that. And it just relates to different networks that your brain uses depending on like how energetic and focused you are. So it will help you to create content if you start drafting stuff when you're not as energetic and not as focused, and then come back and edit that stuff and start and schedule it when you are more energetic and focused. That will dramatically increase your content output.
Nice. And there was another question from Chelsea about solely posting on Twitter when starting out, just so you don't add more stress. We talked about this a bit, but yes, priorities are a huge thing. Having the like Twitter for me is priority, right? For other people that have, say, already started out on LinkedIn or started out on Instagram or another traffic generating platform, that is your priority, right? You already have leverage there, you already have momentum built. But for me and for those starting out, would highly recommend Twitter being that main place, just because as you are learning and as you will come to learn, it's like the foundational platform. Writing in itself is the foundation of all communication. It can, once you have it written in an impactful way and you know that it's a good idea, then you can turn that into, let's say, a reel, and the reel's already written and you don't have to second guess whether you're saying the right things or not. When you have a thread written and let's say you want to turn it into a YouTube video, it's already written. The ideas are there. They're good. They're fleshed out. They make sense. So if throughout any of this, it's causing too much overwhelm and it's just like it's creating all of these problems and you're not able to do the one thing of Twitter well, then cut back. Cut back until you have the bandwidth or inspiration to start back on, let's say, newsletters, threads, and in later modules, when I show you how to like repurpose everything for different platforms, that will be like one at a time. You're kind of sticking your foot in the water and like easing your way into it, because I promise if you try to take on like podcast, YouTube, and all this other shit all at once, it's going to be extremely stressful. Like that's I've gone through the fire many times on that.
Yeah, you definitely want to be careful to how much you commit to posting or like putting out content. I've often made the mistake of being a little overzealous and over ambitious and being like, I'm going to create 4 videos a week and I'm going to email seven days a week and all this stuff. And like you publicly commit to it, and then you get burnt out or you have an off week or something like that and you don't. And then once that happens, everything just kind of goes off the rails. So I would either start with like, and for things like newsletters and stuff like that, I would probably start with like an ambiguous schedule, like what you publicly commit to. And that way it leaves you that space to like not overwhelm yourself and then fall off of the content creation bandwagon.
100%. Like it's easy for us to say, okay, yes, I'm going to post one newsletter a week every single Saturday, and that's on our landing page. So that like causes pressure. And then Saturday comes and you have nothing written and you're like, oh, my life's over. I didn't like live up to my promise. I didn't do this, that, and the other. It's okay. It really is. If you need to skip a week, skip a week. Time goes on. Whatever happens, happens. But of course, try to stick to it as much as possible if you do set that schedule. Had another thing I forgot. But okay, one last thing from Chelsea. Thinking of a name has been difficult. I haven't brainstormed much. Did you name your podcast before the community? And also, why did you name them the same thing? Do you think there's a mutual benefit in that? It's a great name and it makes sense in simplicity terms and people remembering it and associating it with you. Yeah, so it's funny. The podcast it got changed to from Modern Mastery to the CoCast because it was causing um like confusion. Like people either thought Modern Mastery was a community or just a podcast. And so when people would DM me and they're like, "Hey, you said this thing in Modern Mastery and like I don't understand it. Can you help me with it?" And then it's like, do you mean the podcast? Do you mean the community? Like what part of it? And eventually it just caused too much friction and I named it the CoCast. So at the end of the day, brand names or like whatever you decide to name something, again, it can change, it can evolve, and that's perfectly fine. But the other thing is, like, when in doubt, your name works. It works, especially if you are building that authority and people are registering it with your name. It just makes sense. Like the Rich Roll podcast, Danny Miranda podcast. I changed mine to the Co-cast because, again, I've said this a few times, not on this call, but the brand is formed by the content. Like the name of the brand, the having the perfect bio, it's good. It serves a purpose. But the content over time, the content that stacks up and iterates and gets refined over 6 to 12 months is really what matters, because that's what people see. People may see your bio once, and then when they come back and like look at your profile, they'll see it again. But that's it. But they see your content either every day, every week in a newsletter or a video or a podcast. And so that is where the majority of your focus should be. And then when that inspiration comes and you're like, oh, I need to add this to my vision or in the Notion, or this is an interest I want to pursue, then you can start to incorporate that in your brand. So it's like brand is macro, zoomed out, and then content is like micro, zoomed in, what we should be focusing on. So brand, it's like you have a broad perspective when you're thinking about it. You'll probably get stressed out at one point, but again, it's zoomed out. You don't need to stress too much about that. In terms of content, that's where a lot of the struggle is going to be happening, and you're going to make a lot of connections and like improve your skill set a lot more with that. So, question from Minjae Cho. Hey Dan, I'm thinking about starting a website and posting some long form content or blogs to create more trust. I really like your template. Is it built in ClickFunnels? Do you mind sharing the funnel? It's not built in ClickFunnels, so I can't really share it. It is built with Elementor and Elementor Cloud, which I think I have in the approved products section of the Discord. But I would highly, if you are, again, this can add a lot to your plate for those listening that are considering building a personal website. This can add a lot to your plate, and a website is a pretty big project to dive deep onto. So if you have the bandwidth to create one, feel free. But the reason I recommend Review, the newsletter software, over something else, or even starting a blog, is because it backlogs the newsletters for you, right? So the main purpose of my blog is to just backlog my newsletters, but Review does that so then you can come and plug them and share them with people when necessary. So in terms of Minjae, DM me and I'll help you with that, because that's a whole like tutorial or something else in itself. From Skill, my hotel's Wi-Fi is pretty sketchy. Oh, so I do have a question. Right now, even when I have the first iteration of my purpose and vision, I still experience the feeling of being lost, confused, and insecure when knowing the actual steps that you need to do, especially since they're pretty easy on paper. Do you guys have any approaches that allow you guys to push through fear and mental hurdles? Yes, do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it, comes to mind here, and it becomes very easy to check the to-do list when you're in the flow. But are there any advice you would actually give to actually getting into that flow much easier? Yes. So right now, you have the first iteration of purpose and vision out. So take it out of your mind. It's going to be hard, but just take it out of your mind. And I would focus solely on the profile optimization section of the course, and then under that, like the getting started with content creation. Focus on researching and generating ideas from either YouTube videos, Medium articles, and potentially a book that you've read on the topic or want to read on the topic, and start to bring your focus solely to generating good ideas and turning them into, or like reading and understanding what makes a high engaging tweet, which of course we'll talk about more, but you can start to see that by studying other people, making those connections, and looking inside the Inspiration Lab section of the Notion dashboard, where I have all of my older tweets and how I structured them and laid them out. So taking an idea that you generated from research and then popping it into a template and trying to make it impactful and kind of having fun, like structuring and playing around with the idea in a way that will make people engage. And then last question in the Discord. Hey Dan, when starting to put content out there, I heard it's better to start curating instead of throwing only just your opinion, as nobody knows you. Should it be 80-20 curating versus your own stuff? And how long should the stage take until you start putting more of your own stuff? So, a balance, because either way, you'll have to practice putting your own opinions and your own advice out there, but there is always the curation option, right? And this was included in part of the video, in the getting started with content creation section of this entire module, and how you can kind of leverage other people's content to do that. So if you see a tweet on Twitter and you have good ideas and want to research and, let's say, turn it into a thread, then you can write the thread and you can tag the person in it and say, follow this guy because he taught me all of this, and that guy will potentially retweet your thread and get more eyes on it. Another way, I had like 10 of these today. I'll show you them so you have more of an idea of what I am saying. Share. So you can see exactly what I'm talking about here, where Ashley, she wrote this thread, right? Now, she's in this cohort, and she is an expert on like optimizing health, right? So she wrote about dopamine, which is a pretty popular topic, and usually gets good engagement. And she wrote about it, and then she included Joey here, right? And so this is helpful to us as well, like whether she's tagging Joey or me or anyone, like Tribe of Mentors that she follows and is inspired by. It helps us because if she gets a lot of traffic on this thread, we're going to get a good amount of traffic on our profiles as well, right? So you can talk about one thing and either link a tweet, or you can just straight up say, follow Joey Justice for more on this. And we get notifications for these. So then we'll look at it and potentially retweet it. And like she had me down here, and it's like, why wouldn't we retweet it? It's a win-win. It's a good thread. Looks good. The only reason bigger accounts wouldn't retweet it is either because they're just not online, or they get so many notifications that they didn't see it, or there's a lot of little nuances here, right? And so you have to kind of play it tactically, where if I just retweeted something and like I don't want to clog up my timeline, I'm either going to wait to retweet this or I'm not going to retweet it, right? So there's different things you need to take into account here, but overall I wouldn't worry about that. I would still just write the thread, send it, and then another bonus on top of this is Ashley could have just sent this to me and been like, hey, thanks for helping me write this thread. I hope you get some followers, right? Something as simple as that, and then that increases the chances even more. And with threads, if you do this, like threads are a very good way of getting more eyes on your profile and getting more followers because they're long form and you're giving people more reasons to follow you. But they can also be a time suck. So it's worth getting out there for practice. Just one piece of advice is if they don't do well when you're under like 1,000 followers, you'll probably get discouraged, but don't get discouraged. That's the best advice I can give. And then another kind of curation thread. Like, as I said, I got maybe like 3 or 4 of these today, but 10 threads that will turbocharge your career. This one's doing pretty well. Oh, wow. Okay, that's why, but that's cool. So he pretty much just like the who, you tag the person, what, 20 career principles, and then you have the thread. And you do that for a few people, and now this sends notifications to all of them. All of these people know that if we all retweet this, we're all going to get some followers. It's win-win, right? And we're getting eyes on some of our best content because that's where they got it from. And now the way you can find these, and let's say you just want to do it for the tribe of mentors that you've created, you can download Twemex. If you haven't seen it in the actual module yet, it's just Twemex, twemex.app. You can install on Chrome. It'll add this cool little thing to your sidebar, and then it'll show all of your top tweets. So here's a thread right here, a really high performing thread that gets this guy a lot of followers. So I could copy this URL, start to create a thread out of it, and you can create like a theme as well. So this is for turbocharging your career. I know Justin Welsh has one on like business lessons. You could create one on productivity lessons, focus lessons. Like if someone can take this, but focus for me and other people, it just works every single time talking about focus because it's so applicable to everyone's life and anything that they're doing. And so a thread that would work extremely well is 10 tweets, 10 tweets that will 10x your focus, right? That's it. Leave it at that. 10 tweets that'll 10x your focus. And then you go to either your tribe of mentors accounts or just really anyone. And when you click on the account and you go to this, it'll show the user. So you can start to search their tweets. And let's just look at focus. So I'm going to focus on that. But you can see what I mean. Take some time to research. And then, like, let's say we want to use this one, copy the URL, start to create a thread, and boom. If they have huge accounts or even like a 50,000 or even 20,000 follower account, you're still going to get a ton of eyes on your profile. So that was a long way of answering like the curation method, but I would have a balance to both. I would have the like curation side of things because it's very, very good to grow that way. It's a great way to grow, but also start introducing your own ideas, start building authority, start teaching people about the interest that you want to be known for. And of course, like it's easy for me to say this and it's easy for you to get overwhelmed with all of the different ways of doing this and things you need to create. But again, remember this is over like this isn't like I need to do all of this in one day. I need to have curation and all this other stuff one day. I would focus on educating people on stuff throughout the week and then creating a curation thread once a week if that's something you want to incorporate and start growing.
You can also do that with your newsletter too. I know that some people have like a Fire Friday or something like that where they kind of curate other content or usually their own content, but that helps you create just like another newsletter or a blog article or something like that. Two things I want to point out really quick. So Twemex is really useful. One thing that I've noticed though is that it pulls from like a very recent range, like the past couple months. So when you're scrolling through the Twemex thing, it may not show stuff from a few months ago. So a big life hack that a lot of people don't know about is Twitter's advanced search feature. So I just put an example link in the chat, but you can use that. Like I use that to, like when I can't think of a tweet like today, I will use that to look at stuff that I've posted that's performed really well. Well, you can do that with other accounts. Like you could look at Dan's account in there by swapping out my name with his. You can put in keywords. So you could search like from Danco, the Danco, focus or other keywords. And you can also search for a range as well. This link doesn't have that, but you can do that. And so the other thing I wanted to point out was I saw a discussion about brand names, and a great tool is namecheck.com. I put the link in the chat, but you can put in a name in there and it will check if that name is available on a ton of different platforms. So if you really care about like brand cohesiveness and you want one name for everything, then you can check to see if that name is available on various platforms with this website. Super useful tool.
Nice. All right. So now we're getting into the chat questions. So the first one, From Josh is about spending all day on social media for the sake of like engagement and keeping up with the algorithms. Joey and I have talked about this a lot. The main way to do it is one, schedule your tweets. Tweet Hunter, it's like 39 a month. So if you don't want to invest in that yet, use TweetDeck. Um, it's just tweetdeck.com. You can also schedule them on Twitter desktop. So if you like write a tweet on the desktop, there's a schedule button and you can start to like schedule tweets there. And then you don't have to be online to actually go about those things. And then in terms of engaging with other people or even people that reply to your posts, time blocks, right? Uh, let's say 30 minutes twice a day. For those 30 minutes, you go in and comment on 10 accounts. You engage with other people. And then the other 30 minutes, you go in and you respond to everyone that has replied to your posts. And then boom, like you can, it's extremely difficult because we're on our phones all the time. But if you can manage to create that schedule for yourself where it's like, okay, I'm going to go on for 15 to 30 minutes at this time, run through this list of people, engage with them, and then another 15 minutes, 15, 30 minutes, maybe in between a work block over here, then I can reply to the people that have engaged with my content. And then at that point, it's kind of just up to you to not get sucked into Twitter throughout the day and know that you have those two times to come in and dedicate to Twitter. And it can be one time, it can be three times, it can be whatever it is, but time blocks, time blocks, time blocks. Okay. Next one, so we can get through these. Good people. Who to follow from Cat. So, oh, that we answered that. That was Ed Lattimore. Cool, cool, cool. Zooming through these. Joey, do you have anything to say about that one while I zoom through these? I'm still getting used to this flow.
No, I completely agree. Time blocks are very important. And again, having time blocks for drafting stuff, if you're a morning person, like later in the day, and then having time blocks to edit and implement, that will really help improve your output and the quality of your writing too. Don't don't try not to let yourself get in a situation where if your newsletter comes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, don't get yourself in a situation where you're like writing it at 8 a.m. Eastern time on those days. That's not a good place to be. And yes, I'm 100% talking about myself.
Nice. Okay. So from Blum, about being anonymous because and not being able to share professional profile picture or professional experience, that's perfectly fine. Um, as I mentioned in the what would it be called? The professional experience, let's say credentials, right? So that's some kind of authority booster. The other way to boost authority would be depth. So giving in depth and unique perspectives relating to crypto um, would be the way you build that authority, right? And then once you get either client results or like people are giving the ideas that you're giving out praise, you can start to leverage those as social proof. So I wouldn't worry about it too much because there are plenty of crypto accounts that are doing this perfectly fine by not having the professional profile picture. And if you, it seems like you've already chosen the crypto route, which is great, right? So now you don't have to necessarily worry about baking all of these things in because you can always come back and bank on crypto and give that advice and like actionable breakdowns and other things like that. Okay. Oh, you mentioned that. Yeah, and that's one thing. So, Oscar, that's one thing to mention about affiliate marketing is that if you haven't gone through the product, a lot of people won't give you an affiliate link. So, if you plan to affiliate for something, make sure it's something that you're genuinely interested in so you can go through it, apply the information, understand what's inside, so then you can promote it correctly to your audience. And then Oscar asked, Dan, you went from 500 to 50,000 followers in a year. I don't think so. I think it was 20. Was it 10 or 20? I think it was 20,000. But yeah, when I mentioned it going through the Notion dashboard, that was like just an example that came to mind. But I believe it was 20,000. If you really want to know, post in the Discord and I'll find out somehow. Profile clicks demonstrate deeper interest. Yep, exactly it. All right, digging through these. I'll have a better way of structuring all of this later on. Maybe we'll just keep the questions. Like if we want to have a question answered in here, we'd post it in that Discord thread, even during the call, so it's all organized. So things are looking good. Joey, did you notice any other questions going down?
I think Chelsea had a question that you might be able to add on a bit to, which was, if my primary audience is women, would it be smart to make it not directed at a certain sex when posting on Twitter? My thought was, if her brand's aimed at women, then I think she can and maybe even should target her content to women. I've seen a few feminine-based accounts do that with success.
Yeah, no, the femininity angle is a very good one. It's the same thing with the masculinity angle, and you build a tribe much easier that way. It will, just like a heads up, masculinity accounts, since I don't really follow many femininity accounts, it's with the masculinity accounts, there will always be the people that come in and like say, this doesn't only apply to men, this, that, and the other, but that's fine. That's engagement. It's only helping you out in that case. One good person to emulate for this in terms of like how they're creating content and emulating, you may not be in the relationship space, but Taylor Burrows, she does this well and targets mainly women, I believe. Her content is targeted at women, but her services is like matchmaking services. Cool, cool. Digging through these. Man, you guys are chatting it up. I love it. Okay, we're looking good. Also, for Joey or Dan, my question is, if my primary audit, oh, that was the one. I found it. Okay, so there wasn't many after that if you saw it. All right, yeah, it's looking good. Apologies for the silence there as I scrolled through. We'll definitely restructure that next time so there's not much downtime. But we're a bit over time, which is no problem at all. We need to get all the questions answered. But in the meantime, I truly appreciate you guys showing up. If you are watching the recording of this or you just have more questions, again, Discord is completely wide open for as many questions as you have, and I'm happy to answer them. A few last updates is that every call, I hope people don't try to join the call that was set for 1 p.m. or it was 2 p.m. Eastern time in the Calendly. For some reason, Calendly put that date there on accident, like when I put it in, and it won't go away. I've tried everything, I promise, but all of the other calls in Calendly shouldn't have that option. So it's a 12 p.m. Eastern time every Saturday. The modules will be released on Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And the next module that we have to look forward to, just to give a little teaser, is content and growth mastery. So we're going to be going over a 3-point content system for ecosystem for getting the newsletter, threads, and tweets to work very cohesively together. And so it's much more streamlined in creating all of those. So it just doesn't take all day to do that and hopefully isn't too overwhelming. But as I mentioned in this, if one of those is causing overwhelm, you just cut it out. We're going to be going over long form content mastery, medium form content mastery, which is like threads, LinkedIn posts, Instagram captions, short form content mastery, which is like tweets, reels, and like getting that short, punchy, and impactful deal. And then just kind of like optimizing that flow and testing, iterating, all that fun stuff. So the next module, all content. We're all going to become expert content creators to an extent. But that's it for this one. So I appreciate you all coming. Joey, thank you so much for the help too. And I hope you guys, today's Saturday, correct? Yes. I hope you guys have an incredible Saturday. So thanks again, guys. I'll see you in the Discord.